Welcome to Taurus TV. I'm Kezia Dawn. Thanks for joining me. We all love to be entertained by a good drama, comedy or a musical, whether it be live on the big screen or at home on the telly. It feeds a deep need within us. The performing arts are one of the longest surviving industries that date back thousands of years, even beyond the ancient Greeks, credited with the origin of what we might call Western theatre. COVID trashed the performing arts industry globally. Music, opera, dance and drama have all been impacted. But how about literature and writing? How has the magic of words been impacted in the past 3 years, and how can this be addressed? My guest today has been deeply rooted in the arts here in Australia for more than 35 years. He's been an artistic director, editor, writer, events manager, director, choreographer and dancer. For the past 7 years, he's even been the Executive Director of WestWords, which champions the stories, the people, places and cultures from the heart of Western Sydney. Welcome, Michael Campbell. So WestWords has attracted the likes of the New South Wales Governor and actors like Brian Brown. Tell us, why are they so interested in WestWords and why do they take such an interest in it?
Quite simply because literature changes lives. And why WestWords? Well, WestWords, what we do is that we create and share the stories of Western Sydney. And Western Sydney is where 1/10 of Australia's population lives. It's the most richly diverse place in Australia. It is quite, in my view, the face and the shape of contemporary Australia. Literature and the stories we tell ourselves and each other shape how we view ourselves, how we deal with ourselves, our relationships, and they form the narratives of our lives. Literature gives us meaning, and it gives us sort of the context within which we shape our values.
So WestWords, it focuses on literacy. So WestWords, it focuses on literacy and reading, especially among young people. What are you hoping to achieve out of this initiative?
Well, what we do is that with creating the stories of Western Sydney, we start with children in primary school. And we do that arc right through primary school, after school, the emerging writers, getting them into their first publication, all the way until we employ professional writers and the award-winning writers of Australia and the cultural leaders of Australia back to be role models and to show the young children that we deal with it's possible. It's possible for them. And with literacy, one of the things about literacy and teaching them really high quality literature and exposing them to the best of stories, it gives them confidence with who they are. It helps actualize their lives because it gives them a voice that they can be confident with, going out into the world to shape who and what they are.
So Michael, tell me a story. Tell me a story that has deeply impacted you.
It has been probably the story of going about 3 or 4 years ago into a high school in Sydney's West. It was a rough school, you know. They lock the doors behind each of the students. And we were called in because whilst other kids were literally burning down the gym, whilst the police were visiting almost every day, whilst the assistant principal ended up in hospital because he got beaten by the year 12s, and whilst there was knife buybacks, there was a group of about 14 young boys who were getting bullied. And the school, because they were dealing with all that other stuff, they wanted to give these group of 14 young boys something else. So they called us in the first year, in year 9, we taught them poetry. We gave them, that teenage boys, a way in which to express themselves, their hearts, the vulnerable bits of themselves. And they could do that. And then the following year, We took them over a year-long program, and we took them out into a camp into regional New South Wales with other kids from Lightning Ridge. We published them in a book. And after those 2 years, one of the kids, his name was Ali, said, "WestWords changed my life." And that's what we do it for. And in that school, for the very first time, in over a decade, they had their first Extension English class. And then in Year 12, their Extension 2 English class. And all of those boys became prefects, vice captain, and Ali became the captain of the school. And now he is living the life that he wants to lead. That's what we do, why we do it, and that's why I wake up every single morning and think, yeah, I'm in the right job.
That's beautiful. What a mission to have in life. So WestWords, is it mainly in Western Sydney, or do you have plans to expand to other areas of New South Wales?
What we do is, with Western Sydney, one of the glorious things about Western Sydney is over half the world's cultures are represented there. As I said before, it is rich, it is diverse, and those people come from right around the globe. And so the stories of Western Sydney are a New South Wales story, and it's a global story. And we also work very specifically also in regional New South Wales. In these last school holidays, we were in Orange working with the Orange Aboriginal Lands Council. And we were in Broken Hill working with the mental health services out there and with young people in the schools out there. And we continue to work regionally.
Sorry. Sharon, are we in business and the wider community, are we reading less? And why are we reading less?
Yes, isn't it interesting? I think we're all getting that shorter attention span and reading only what we think we need to do to allow business to continue, whereas I think that's such a shame that we're losing perhaps that ability to open a book and learn and read in a leisure capacity. So what struck me with WestWords is how by telling stories and by listening to stories we were changing lives and making people's lives in Australia better for the love of reading. So that was what was inspiring for me.
Do you agree, Michael?
I think we're reading differently. I think, like Sharon says, our attention spans are getting shorter. But in getting shorter, there is a greater need for the length. And what we all need is a space to be reflective. And when we're talking in business, being reflective is probably one of the most valuable moments, because in being reflective, being able to step back is when you start to learn, and you start to learn very intimately. And reading does that because it's you and the words on a page. And you'll be able to find context within which you can refine yourself and refine your business. And, you know, from a business point of view, WestWords is just charging ahead. It's an arts service company that is actually kicking goals business-wise, because we bring the creativity and the knowledge that artists have to bear in the gig economy, in a changing economy. And that's where the arts brings the edge to business. And we've been recognised through the Western Sydney Awards for Business Excellence. And last year I was named as Outstanding Business Leader in the entirety of Western Sydney from an arts company. And I think that that's because we bring that edge.
Sharon, you started Taurus 27 years ago to help build people's brands and businesses and grow these kinds of organisations. How have you been able to help Michael in building his brand?
I think the time Michael and I spent together was a good chance to question and query and double back each other. So we kind of looked at every and challenge, and then we sort of threw it up in the air and then came back to, because we were putting together a strategy for WestWords. And I think that reflective time and being able to take a step back was useful, and we came out with some very practical short-term wins, as well as perhaps the longer-term ones that have been in play.
And the other thing that I'd like to add to that is that the arts in Australia is seen as something other from life and business and family. It seems like an indulgence, just leisure, just distraction. Whereas the messaging that Sharon helped with and Taurus helped with is because I believe arts is actually intrinsic. Because what the arts do is they actually reflect, interpret and distill our experiences. So it's actually at the centre. But to be able to get effective messaging of that cuts through preconceived notions is really, really, really difficult. And that's where Sharon and Taurus helped.
Further on that, in terms of WestWords, you've mentored around 27,000 children. You've partnered with around 65 organisations now. Where is your greatest need going forward?
It's twofold. The greatest need is that over the past 7.5 years, we have brought young kids right through that pathway, it's a horrible term, but a pathway of opportunity, to bring their stories to life. What our greatest need is to help to provide a platform for them to be able to get their stories into the broader community. Because at the moment, it's seen to be too much of a risk because there is too much prejudice about Western Sydney, let's face it. So it's that, to make it commercially viable. So that's the greatest need, because we need to keep that pathway going. And the other need is that in the sort of the environment we're in, everybody is after the bright, shiny product. That's what they're after. But and the project that sort of makes them feel good. But what's needed in the post-COVID world, when the inflation is going rife, when the cost of living is spiralling, what is most expensive is people. It's the arts workers that make everything else possible. What we need is quite simply the money to be able to, and to give that infrastructure so that the rest can happen.
Would you say that that's the greatest passion on your heart right now?
The greatest passion is on my heart right now is always that story that I told you about Ali at that rough high school. It's those kids. That's the greatest passion, because it's about releasing the future.
Well, Michael, Sharon, thank you for joining us. And everyone else, thank you for joining us as well. I'm Kezia Dawn.